Good morning? Good afternoon, chat. To be honest, I don't know what time people listen to this. It's like some homework for me to do. Today's Thursday. It's an off day for the team. Trying to keep a little light, but catching up on some of the longer term projects that I got going on. Nice thing about off days is usually that does mean everyone's trying to take a break, recharge for big series this weekend. And for us, who have responsibilities beyond day-to-day operations, it's time to catch up, get ahead a little if you can. That way you can 100% focus on game day ops, day-to-day stuff when the team needs you. So it's good because like no polo, get to wear jeans. See, look, jeans, nice jeans, no polo. There's, as usual, since it's ballpark ops is doing all of their maintenance on the park right now. Might be some places we can't go typically, just because don't want to get in the way of any of their day-to-day work. So their off day, or their on day, is the team's off day. So okay, a couple questions. One pretty deep one about baseball parks and park dimensions. So before I get to that, remember, you can ask questions in the comments below. I read all the comments, and there are a handful of questions that come through there. So that's one way to do it. Another way is in the Discord. You can join the Discord. There's a link somewhere, wherever you're watching this, I'm sure. And then, of course, if you are watching live streams on Twitch, you can always ask in there too. And for some, I'll answer you there. But for those who want their questions asked and answered here, happy to do that here too, as long as I know you got a question. So, with that said, question about ballpark dimensions. So, someone asked, like, all ballparks have different dimensions. So, to hit a home run in Cincinnati is different than hitting a home run in San Francisco. Hitting a home run in San Francisco is different than hitting a home run at Yankee Stadium. And by different, I mean the distance you have to go. So the furthest part of the wall in San Francisco is 421 feet, as listed by their wall. The furthest part in Cincinnati is, I think, 405 or 408. That's straight center field, which, as you can do the math, pretty large difference. If you have to go over 10 feet just to get the same run batted in, seems a little quirky and maybe even unfair at times, right? but it does give credence to both home field advantage. And so if you build your team around your park and how the park can minimize or maximize different opportunities, then, and of course you're playing half your games at home in that park, then are there like different advantages? Are there different considerations beyond just how the quirkiness of the park, how a home run is generated? Are there other considerations? So there's a lot that goes into a park, and park design, park factors, anything you're doing that minimizes or maximizes different results due to your park. So, and teams are very aware of this, right? Like, one of the more recent examples is in Baltimore, where Camden Yard, they in left field, if I'm not mistaken, they took out a chunk of the wall to basically extend the wall. And that extension of the wall is pushed the distance for a home run back several feet. I think 8 feet, maybe 10 feet. It was pretty dramatic. So it pushed it back several feet. And as it pushed it back, it created like a weird outlet, I guess, like a bay. So the wall wasn't flush or even. Like if you look at our outfield, notice how it's like pretty even all around. So imagine, let's just say here, if there was like a chunk of it taken out, and there was just like a weird rectangle. They called it Baltimore, and so this was a deliberate change to decrease the amount of home runs hit into that area, increase either balls in play, or more likely the ability to field balls for an out in that area. So in terms of teams and their awareness of these walls, oh, by the way, epilogue to that is they reverted those changes. So now it is a shorter fence again back there. So teams make these changes all the time. Not all the time, but if they make a change, it's telegraphed to the league. And then as it's telegraphed over to the league, I believe you can make a one change every, I don't know if it's every 3 years or every 1 year. I don't know what the rule is, but there's a rule on how often you can change the dimensions of your park. So, if someone knows the rule, leave a comment below. I'm pretty sure it's like once every, I don't know why I keep thinking it's once every 3 years. But it's you can't just like, hey, today the Yankees are in town, so we're gonna push the walls back. Like, you're not allowed to do that. So you have to have those changes in, and those changes stay in for the year, I believe. So the question is like, there's the quirkiness of it, and people obviously enjoy going to different ballparks and seeing the weird dimensions at times, how a different park plays. But the question of how does this affect player acquisition? How does this affect how people recruit players? How teams can recruit a player? So this is actually, I don't know how open of a topic this is. I don't remember, and it makes kind of some sense. I don't remember really players discussing specifically any team publicly about why they would or wouldn't want to play there, for obviously many different reasons. But which is why it's curious to know if there's a ton of public talk about it. But for people who are avid baseball fans, everyone kind of knows that this is something that happens, particularly in free agency. So a classic example, not a classic, but a typical scenario is a player, let's say a pitcher, is in their contract year, their final year of their contract, and then that impending off season, they're going to be a free agent. And let's say they play okay, they don't play fantastic, but because they aren't blowing the socks off, they're not going to get some incredible deal, right? So what should they do? Should they sign a longer term deal or a shorter term deal? And so let's say their thought is, well, I am better than what I did this past season, and I'd rather sign a shorter deal to show that. Okay. So they're going to sign a shorter deal. So where are they going to sign the shorter deal in order to show that they have more value? A place where the park is smaller and they hit a lot of home runs? Or a place where the ballpark is really big and home runs are really hard to come by? Well, for a pitcher, obviously, you want to play in a place where you're limiting damage. And if you're able to convert a lot of hits into outs because of your park, then that's going to be advantageous for various statistics related to the pitcher. So for players in free agency, them and their representation, agents, firms, people who oversee their contracts and contract negotiation, these are things that they definitely consider. And again, like, I doubt that there are any public articles on any specific player talking about dimensions of a park and that as a factor in their decision making, but it is pretty clear that that is the case, right? Just from a rational standpoint, you wouldn't want to go someplace that you could potentially be worse if that's going to impact your earnings, your career earnings over the course of the next several years, right? So, so it makes sense that this does affect recruitment. Now, the way it affects recruitment does go both ways. So for players who are trying to reestablish or establish more future value or more contract potential earning, you also have players who seemingly like overperform in a park, and then you have to neutralize or figure out a way to say, all right, well, how much did the park help this particular player? So think of like if a player hit a lot of home runs in their park for the last season and they were on a 1-year deal. All right, they look like they're a big, slugger, home run masher, could hit anywhere from like 30 to 40 home runs given what he's done. And every team wants him. Okay. Every team wants you. But if you look a little deeper, it looks like all their home runs come from hitting their right-handed bat, and when they hit, almost all their home runs are into left field. Okay, almost all of their home runs in left field. What if your park has a bigger, deeper left field? What do you do then, right? How successful will that player be in your park? One interesting park factor example that's pretty infamous, I guess, but it's a good example of the effect of park factors is there's several articles on a player, first baseman Brandon Belt, who majority of his time played in San Francisco with the historic 2010s Giants team. And Brandon Belt, his whole analysis was, this guy doesn't hit a lot of home runs. He's a first baseman, but he doesn't have a ton of power. But if you overlaid his hits on any other park in the league outside of San Francisco, he'd go from a 20 home run hitter to a 40 home run hitter for several of the seasons, which would, for some of those seasons, definitely put him in the conversation of like Silver Slugger, best first baseman bat, and at times one of the most impactful players if he just wasn't at the park he was at. Hold on, Chad. It's the cleaning the concourse. So I'm trying to avoid. Hold on, Chad. Hold on. It's really loud. It's really loud right now. I'm sorry. All right, almost away. Oh no, he's catching up to me. Okay, I'm away. I think this is far away enough. I'm pretty sure. Okay, yeah, this is definitely far away enough. So Brandon Belt's a good example of a player who's like dramatically affected by his park. And there are many public articles to show that that was the case. So the thought of like, as a player, you could just improve your statistics and change relatively nothing about who you are and how you generate your performance, and the improvement is solely based around the stadium you're in, seems pretty important. So everyone, players, front office, coaches, different staff, agents, and obviously the public to some extent, they all know that this is the case. So it does make it a little difficult. I can't obviously speak too much into this, but I will say there are definitely conversations about how the ballpark would affect a particular player, and it does go both ways. If you want a player, if a player is, if you're able to acquire a player and they're like, oh, the Cincinnati Reds, their ballpark is one of the smallest parks in the league, there might be more negotiation required because your park plays very differently. Our park plays very differently than other parks. Whether that means certain premiums or certain performance bonuses due to the park's design and basically given some assurances to a player because they might be worse or better here. That's stuff that we have to consider all the time. So, something to be mindful of for sure. How a player sees their own performance in your park, and how that agent, their representation, perceives that as well. So, okay. That was a pretty good question. It's a pretty heady baseball question, by the way. Let's see, next question. This one is tailoring your resume. Ooh. Someone asked, like, when you're applying to places, when you're tailoring your, like, should you tailor your resume, or should you just have, like, your best resume out there and send that to as many places as possible? And it's an interesting question because I've done both, and I see people do both all the time. When I was applying to places, I would definitely try to tailor my my experience to the places I was applying to. And for me, I had like people are working. I don't want to surprise anyone. People were definitely my experiences are definitely wide. You know, obviously, music journalism doesn't really have a ton of overlap with neuroscience. Neuroscience doesn't really have a ton of overlap with baseball. Baseball doesn't really have a ton of overlap with esports. So there's a ton of places where I've had careers and experience, but was it best for me to put all my recent experience, or was it better for me to tailor my resume and not include some of those experiences in favor for other experiences, or in favor of just having a cleaner read of my profile? And it's tough to say. I would say the issue with resume reviewing in general is you have like automatic systems that are trying to like mine all this content out of a resume now. And if you check if certain keywords are in your resume, and you get flagged upward into the review interview process. And some of that is a little more hands-on. Some of that is 100% automated, depending on the place you're applying to and the resources and quantity or the resources they have to review applicants and the quantity of applicants they're getting. So that's something to be a little mindful of. But in my experience, I've always had better luck, kind of is the word, but I've always had better luck putting together my most recent resume. So my work experience as of most recent. Now, there are some gaps. I do leave some things out, like any consultant work that I do, I'm not putting stuff down. Like, I'm not putting stuff down that I did with Hewlett Packard when I was a global ambassador for them, right? One, it's like content creation is usually not what people are looking for. But two, like, it's also very unique, and it shouldn't move the needle for many people if I would be applying for like a more technical role, right? On the other side, there's a idea of um, putting everything down because you don't want gaps in your resume. A lot of people talk about resume gaps, which I think is a little odd. Like, I never really understood it, but particularly in academia, a lot of people would say like, oh, you don't want a publication gap. People want to make sure you're publishing yearly and ideally multiple times a year. But I'm like, why would that matter? Like, what if your work doesn't take those kinds of revolutions? You know, like, what's the matter with publishing something once every 3 years if it takes 3 years to do really good work? I don't know. So, but other people would care. There are people who care about this kind of stuff. If you have gaps in your resume, can you explain why you were not at work from 2021 to 2023? And it's like, yeah, I can explain it because people got furloughed in COVID and I didn't have a job because there were no jobs. You know, like, there are things like that, right? On the other hand, like, if you have on your resume, like, yeah, from 21 to 23, I was a DoorDash driver, and you're applying to, like, Google or something, like, one hiring manager might see that as, like, okay, like, I get it. Unemployment's pretty tough. And on the other side, people might say, oh, that person wasn't good enough to get another job, even in a pandemic. You know? So, I do think tailoring your resume is a little lucky. But the way I've approached resume building or resume creation is from the point of view of, like, the person receiving it, what do I want them to know about me, right? If my resume is like all the things I want them to talk about with me as icebreaker, like this is the first time they're getting introduced to me and this is all they know, then I'm probably more interested in talking about not just everything, but the most recent things. So my resume, I talk about the most recent things. Here are all the things that I've done most recently. And then, just to check the box, here's where I went to school. So, actually not long ago on stream, I showed my resume. And a lot of people were like, oh, you have a very simple resume. Like, yeah, it is one box that says, here are my most recent roles. And then another box that is my education box. And then at the very top, how to contact me. And that's it. That's it. So yeah, my resume, it's out there. I don't really, I haven't had a need to use a resume in almost a decade now, 8 years. So, and that's obviously a luxury of mine, but for those who still need to use their resume, something I said on stream, which I actually do, this is advice I'd say, and I also do, unlike the recruiter spam advice, I update my resume yearly. When there's performance review, which is yearly, I think it's important to update your resume. And a lot of people might hear that and say, do you fear that you're going to need it? And my idea is like, no, I don't fear I need it. But it's a good point in time where if I'm thinking about what do I want people to know about me, how would I want people to talk about me, I think putting together your resume once a year, updating it once a year is actually, in my opinion, pretty healthy. Like, it is a good way to self-reflect. a good way to be like aware of their contributions. Like, what are the things you want people to know in a very small, succinct space? And if people were going to call people you worked with and ask about those things, what would they ask about? So like, hey, Nick Wan, Senior Director of Analytics, did he contribute to improving the projection system? Did he contribute to improvements in new metrics to measure performance in baseball? Did he contribute to scouting and player development? Were there new experimental avenues he's tried and showcased? And I'd want anyone they would call, I would want everyone to be able to say like, yeah, he did, and here are the things he did, right? So I think it's helpful for me just to know like what my contributions are. Gives me a nice self-reflection point. And obviously, I never want to use my resume. If I'm in a situation where I have to use it, then I feel probably like things aren't going so well. But if I do use it, if I ever was in a situation where I had to use it, I also feel like I'm very prepared because I'm continuously modifying and updating it. So yeah, I update mine once a year, and I don't tailor it to any particular job. And I haven't really since I haven't. Even in 2020 when I had left the Reds, I wasn't really tailoring my resume for any of the roles I had applied to, and I was still getting interviews. So no, I hadn't. So okay. Well, that's all chat. All the questions for today. Hopefully, that one felt short, but hopefully that one felt good. It's weird because like whenever I talk about baseball stuff, I feel like, oh man, so many people know about this stuff, don't they? And then like I go on stream and they're like, wow, I love these podcasts. You talk about all sorts of stuff that no one talks about. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm not. But let me know if you feel one way or another in the comments or in the Discord or on stream. Anyway, gonna get going. I'll catch y'all tomorrow for another one. Bye, chat.